So I'm Mark Middleton with Middleton, Tampa Bay at Compass, and I got licensed in real estate professionally in 2017. Prior to that, I was buying and selling some homes, the fix and flip, and that's what led me eventually into real estate. I have a degree in history from the University of South Florida, and have really been a student of architecture and the history of Tampa Bay ever since I can remember, even back in high school. I really found that history made such a big difference in how everything else developed around the Tampa Bay area. I recently sold a home in Safety Harbor that was built in 1900, and I was doing an open house, talking with some people that walked in, and I just casually said, can you imagine everything that this house has witnessed in the Safety Harbor area as the town really grew up around it? The stories that these homes in these neighborhoods can tell is so interesting, and they've seen so much. Look, when that house was built, the Henry Ford hadn't even released the Model T yet. And so it's really neat to see them still being used today for what the intended purpose was. I love the older homes that can tell a story. The biggest myth about buying or selling these historic homes is that they're money pits, that there's always going to be something to do, something to fix, they're always breaking. And in reality, I think that's even less likely than a newer construction built home, say from the 2010s or 2020s. And that's simply proven because it's already been there in many cases 50, 80, 100 years. Every single home is going to need things taken care of, that routine maintenance. Every so often, you're going to have to replace your roof depending on what the roof material is. It's not that they are inherently risky or that they're going to cost so much more money, or the words that I've heard is a money pit, because they're no different. But in fact, some of these homes have already proven the exact opposite. Some of them have got the exact same windows that they had in it in 1900 or 1925, and they're not as efficient as a double-paned hurricane-resistant window. However, you don't have to replace it, and sometimes by replacing it, you're going to lose some of that historic value. So I think that's what the biggest myth is, and it's really a misunderstanding. It's more knowing what you have, not what everyone expects. We got into a rhythm here in the United States where every 3 or 4 decades they're tearing down houses and rebuilding them. And what's neat about places in Europe and some of the places in South America that I've been is, you'll come across a home that's 600 or 300 years old. That's really, really neat, where we don't really have that in America. Very few homes have survived long term. I love when a home can tell a story, and that it's been there for a century or even sometimes longer, maybe a little bit less. There's just so much character. These old craftsman style homes, there's more character there than in the neighborhoods where every home on both sides of the street look exactly the same. There's just something to be said and appreciated in that. The people that are out looking for a home that is brand new or relatively brand new, say 10 or 15, 20 years old, that's a completely different buyer than someone that should be looking to purchase a home that was built in 1900 or 1925, 1940. You're going to find different building materials. That kind of a buyer, the person that is looking for a newer construction home, is never going to have to even talk about the word asbestos, or they're not going to have to understand the leveling of a foundation and how that works. I've advised people that have been looking at some older homes that they were interested in purchasing, and I told them that this house is just not right for you. The reason that I have is because their expectations aren't aligned with what reality was about these older homes. And I remember a gentleman that we looked at 3 or 4 different homes. They were all in the Seminole Heights area, and my eventual advice was, this type of a home is not for you. You're looking for something that's a newer build, because he was alarmed by everything that was found in every home. And there was nothing inherently wrong with any of the houses that we looked at. He just had his expectations that everything was going to be updated, everything was going to be done. And there are going to be things like the plumbing system, even the sewer line run to the house. Could be older sometimes. I mean, I've sold many homes that still have the old Orangeburg pipes running to the home. Some of these homes still have the cloth electric in the attic. Even if it's not wired for, the house is not wired with that cloth wiring, it can still be present. And sometimes when they convert the wiring over time, they don't remove all that cloth wiring. And then if those things like that are causing alarm in a buyer's mind, when everything is still functioning, you've had a plumbing inspection with the scope to see if everything is working the way that it should, and it is working and functioning the way it should, it can be insured. There's not anything wrong that would cause the insurance agent or the insurance company to flag it and say, hey, we're not going to, based on the score point, we're not going to insure the home, and they're still alarmed by those things, then you're probably the wrong type of buyer for that specific product. You know, the one small detail that I don't think modern buyers appreciate enough are like the old brick chimneys that are oftentimes still there, even if the entire house has been remodeled in these older homes and they've removed the top of the chimney from the roof line. You can't see that anymore, but you'll come inside the home and you'll see the old brick chimney still there. It's really neat, and it harkens back to the history when those homes were built. It adds so much character and flair inside the home. It's something that people don't see it sometimes, and I'll point it out, and then they will appreciate it after they realize what they're looking at. There's a definite difference between a historic home and an older home, and let me tell you what that difference is. Sometimes these homes have been added to a local city, a state, or a national register for historic homes. They'll oftentimes, but not always, have some kind of a plaque or designation on the house that says this home has been preserved, or it will tell the history of a house. There are things that you're going to have to know about those special homes too that have a designation, because sometimes if you're planning on going in to remodel and move walls or change a roof line, you're going to be limited to the work that you can do because it's historically significant and it has been added to a register. As opposed to an older home, you know, which could be any home up and down any street in any town America that is older. I've heard people say now in today's world, 1971 or before that construction date, that would be designated as an older home. And I tend to agree with them. About around 50 years old and older, and you know that changes every year as we march into time. Those are older homes, and if they don't have a designation, they haven't been put onto a register. That's the big difference between them. You have an older home as opposed to a historic home. I love these old neighborhoods that have a lot of history. You can walk down a sidewalk in Hyde Park and imagine what it was like walking to Bayshore Boulevard in 1914 or 1920. People lived and they thrived in their communities. The schools for the kids were close by. It was before the time that we bused children all over different parts of the city, and they have a different vibe to them. You know, last week I was in Angeline, which is a suburb, it's going to be a city someday of itself, but it's a small area in Pasco County, just north of Hillsborough County. It's a brand new neighborhood. They take all the trees down, that they flatten all the land, and then they replant trees and landscape around. This afternoon I was in Hyde Park. You know, some of these trees are well over 100 years old. They're mature. It's just a different vibe, and people have lived there oftentimes for generations. I spoke with a man when I was in Hyde Park. He had lived in his home for 50 years. When you get to a neighborhood like Angeline up in Land O'Lakes, wonderful neighborhood, absolutely beautiful community, and people are just now moving in. There's not that longevity. There's not the old trees and the old growth forest and everything that you're going to have in other parts of more established long-term communities. I believe that what's happening now with time is the builders know what people like, what the aesthetic is that people like today, and they build to that. And that's why you're going to see these neighborhoods now that are developed that are all cohesive. Almost every house on the street looks the same, or every third house will be an identical model to the one that's just right down the road. Where the old craftsman style homes, I love the old Sears craftsman package that you could buy back in the 1920s and 1930s. And even those had the builder that would put them together. Sometimes it would be a family member that would help construct the home, or sometimes they would hire a contractor to come, but then they would have their influence on the way that some of it was finished as well. It made them unique and different. You can walk down these streets that are in these older neighborhoods like Hyde Park or downtown Dunedin, downtown Safety Harbor, and you're going to see each house is representative of their owner's flair, or what it's in some cases looked like for generations. It's really neat. It's completely different than these newer neighborhoods that are being built today. Historic homes have taught me a lot personally over the years. When I first got licensed, and immediately the first house that I listed was built in 1915. It was interesting because I guess that's where I cut my teeth on it, and I felt very prepared since I have studied history, since I had a passion and a love for that type of architecture. What I learned along the way was there are so many little details that you have to get a seller ready for, that you have to educate yourself about that particular home to know the details. So when you do have a buyer's agent that brings a buyer, the information that you've now learned about this home that you're selling can be conveyed to people, because it can really start an emergency or a panic. The last thing that you want, if you represent your seller at the highest level, is having people cancel the transaction and start over with a new buyer. And sometimes that can happen once, 2, or 3 times. And that makes it look like something's wrong with the home, when really it was a lack of understanding of what you were selling and how to convey that to somebody that will not cause them to panic. There's a lot of growth when you've done it a lot now, and you know the questions to ask, you know what information that you need to seek. You tell your seller that, hey, you really should get a pre-inspection of this home before we go on the market, so that way we know what exactly we're selling. Oftentimes, I'm not going to crawl through the attic and find out if we have cloth wiring or if it's been updated at some point. And those are important things, not just when I'm presenting it for sale on the market, but also I want to be able to head off any kind of alarm bells that are going to go off when we're in inspection. So I've really taken the time to learn how to do that in an efficient way that serves the seller at the highest level. When I'm working with the buyer, I know what questions to ask before we even write the offer, so I can give the buyer the best and most available information so they can make a good decision. So I think that's what happens when you do this over and over again. You become familiar with the process, you know what to look for, you know what parts of the house are normal and what parts need some attention, because every insurance company, especially in today's insurance market, that is part of buying one of these older homes. And you need to be prepared so you're not going to waste everyone's time, or you're going to be able to explain it in a really good way.